Hello, everyone. I hope you had a restful holiday. Let's get started in this brand new year, hoping that it's much better than the last one. And this voice thread will cover 2 weeks of content, and your participation here will be worth 2 points. So let's get started talking about multimodal text and semiotic systems. Let's take another look at our roadmap. Remember, I used the analogy of a pyramid to help us think about the building blocks of designing multiliteracy learning experiences. So last year, we covered the foundational blocks of literacies and designing for inclusion. Now, the next couple of weeks, we will look at the resources we use as part of this learning experience. So from a critical literacy point of view, we will learn about the multimodal text and semiotic systems and how to use multimodal text in the classrooms, both for consumption and for production. This is what we call creating to learn. So let's get started with that. So first, as you know, in this course, when we talk about text, we are talking about multimodal texts. How do we define a multimodal text? Well, multimodal texts convey meaning through a combination of meaning-making elements. These meaning-making elements draw upon several semiotic systems, and the semiotic systems are the linguistic, the visual, the audio, the gestural, the movement that appear on screen, and the spatial, which has to do with the position, with the distance, with the framing. So these semiotic systems, first of all, they have materiality and particular conventions that have been socially and culturally produced over time. This means that the modes have a specific grammar, something that we have agreed upon on what they mean, something that humans have agreed upon on what they mean. Those are the conventions of the specific media. And depending on the level in which you are trained in these conventions, in semiotics, it will be the level of your understanding of these texts. Now, it's not necessary that you become a semiotics expert to fully understand the subtleties of multimodal text, because that's beyond the scope of a teacher's knowledge. There are people who dedicate their lives to this, to analyze text. And for us, it's just a good idea to be well versed in these things. So to to be able to navigate all the media that comes to us, because we are immersed in a society that is highly mediated. It has a lot of media around us, in commercials, in sports, in news, in all of these scenarios. We're going to be finding media that we need to decode. So a basic understanding of how to decode these messages and how to teach your students to decode these messages and navigate this society, it's very helpful. Um, and I also wanted to bring up something else about multimodal text and about media, is that media is enjoyable. Both kids and adults enjoy media. And I recall on on a conversation we had in a voice thread, in a previous voice thread, you were watching the misrepresentation trailer, and some of you said something along the lines of oh, now I feel bad because some of the shows that I enjoy and have enjoyed are portrayed in this film as being bad examples, as being sexist shows. And it's not about feeling bad for liking those shows. Definitely increasing awareness over these issues is important, but it's really not about feeling bad for enjoying something that was created to be enjoyed, to bring entertainment. This is an art, and there is a whole industry behind it. If you see the end credits of a movie, you see how many people worked on it, how many families the movie helped feed. So it's not a bad thing that you enjoyed it. But the point is about being aware of the underlying messages in those media and how they contribute to the whole problem in society. Because one show is not the problem. It's all of them, all of the news, the commercial, the movies, the sports that contribute and perpetuate problems of misrepresentation. So it's about being aware of that and to start collectively demanding that creators do a better job at representing diverse people in the media. Just being aware of those problems and helping our students be aware of those things so that the messages don't go unnoticed directly to our subconscious. And the final thing that I want to point out about the these semiotic elements is that notice, even though it is obvious, but to highlight it, that language is one option within multiple options for communication. And it's the idea that we're trying to bring through this course that language should not be placed at the center. Like the linguistic semiotic system is not the only way in which students can understand understand something, and it's not the only way in which they can represent something or be evaluated about some form of knowledge. So, having said all that, here's a quote I want you to comment on. Consider the author. Consider what he does for a living, and tell me, what do you think? What is the answer to this question that George Lucas is asking in this quote? I'll leave you to it to add the comment and the voice thread, and we'll move along. So how do we teach this? How do we teach students how to read and write media? So let's discuss some ways to connect it to our curriculum. I'm going to leave you with these resources. These are really good resources. Media Smarts is the Canadian website for media literacy, and it has a bunch of really good resources, including lesson plans that you can integrate for all grade levels and for all subject areas. So it's worth taking, looking through it. Take a look at that. The other one is Teaching with Movies, and it's a website created to help teachers use movies in their classrooms as a resource. And Media Literacy is the Standards by Frank W. Baker. He is a prominent author on the topic of media literacy. And in that particular website, he goes through all the standards. It's US based, of course, but it has also lesson plan ideas and resources that you can use with your students. So to include media in the curriculum, whenever you use a photograph, a film clip, a commercial, an educational video, an audio recording, a snippet from the news, you have the opportunity to engage students in a better understanding of a bunch of things. So here's the list of all those ideas, of all those things that you will be helping your students understand whenever you include a piece of media in your teaching. Don't miss the opportunity to ask some of these questions. Not all of them, not all the time you will have to include it, but see which ones will be good for students to answer about that particular piece of media, how that media message was created and constructed, who the intended audience is, what techniques might be used to engage, inform, persuade, or educate, who or what might be omitted and why, and who benefits or profits from the message being told in this way, what biases might be inherent, and what stereotypes are promoted. And to link all these to multiliteracies, the first couple of questions, or the first three of those questions, are will fall into what we call analyzing functionally, analyze what a text is doing functionally, and analyzing critically will be the other four questions. So just to bring that little connection to multiliteracies. So here are some frameworks to constructing and deconstructing media. So the one on the left is the Canadian framework. The Canadian framework is based in 5 principles or 5 core key concepts. There are media are constructions, audiences negotiate meanings, media have commercial implications, media have social and political implications, and each medium has a unique aesthetic form. Now, the thing with the Canadian, or at least not the thing, the problem that I have with the Canadian framework is that that third principle, media have commercial implications. Sometimes it's either or, it's either 3 or 4, I will say, because sometimes it's not always about moving money. It's not always about getting you to buy something or to get you attached to a brand, which is a commercial purpose. It's not always about that. You will see some messages that you will have trouble finding. um, what are those implications that have to do with commerce or with power. Those messages that sometimes you see, like promoting the that people take care of the environment, or promoting conscience about climate change, they're non-for-profit, but they are trying to persuade you of an idea, and that idea is what we call, they are trying to get power. Even good ideas in the world need to get power behind them, need to get people pushing them forward. So that's why I like the CML framework better, because it operationalized that in the purpose. This one right here, let me highlight it for you. In the purpose one, it calls that most media messages are organized to gain profit and or power. It's not necessarily for commerce. Sometimes it's about power. Um, Either for good reasons, for bad reasons, as in political propaganda will want to gain power also over you. And that's why I like this framework better, because it puts all of those things into one box that is purpose. While the Canadian framework shows you these 2 principles, and sometimes it's not about commercial implications. Sometimes it's about social and political. And there is no mention in there about power. And power is such an important concept in media. It's not just about those political implications. It's about the power that they want to gain from the message. So that's why I like this framework better. It was proposed by the CML, Center for Media Literacy. It's a US-based organization, and of course, the Canadian framework is older. Like, it has more time, and a lot of the principles relate to the Canadian one. So I'm guessing they took some of the best frameworks around the world and built theirs, but that is completely valid, and that's why I like it. It has been improved. The Canadian framework is from last century. It's a work from last century. Well, this one is to 2019, but it is more current to our media landscape today. So to show my point about how most of these principles match each other, this first principle, understanding that all media are constructions, that somebody did it. It's a human construction. It doesn't just exist, and it has an intentionality behind it. That first principle, it is all media messages are constructed. All media messages are constructions. So the second one is about audience. Is right here is the third principle. Different people experience the same media message differently. It's better explained than audiences negotiate meanings. Yes, audiences participate in the meaning of a text. The other one is the ones that I didn't like so much, 3 and 4, are in some ways contained into 4 and 5, which is content. Understanding the media have embedded values and points of view, and they have a purpose. They are either to gain profit or to gain power. And each medium has a unique aesthetic form corresponds to this form, the format principle here. Media messages are constructed using a creative language with its own rules. It's what we were talking about before with the semiotic systems, that they have certain conventions. So those set of rules, depending on the medium and the technology that you're using, there is a specific grammar for that medium, and how much you are able to understand those techniques and how they are trying to either catch your attention or convince you of some idea. That is how you are, to the extent that you're able to understand that, is to the extent that the messages are going to get to your conscious brain and not just subtlety going to your subconscious. So that's why it's important to sometimes understand a bit about the format. And it's why we included the reading from the Victoria government that had some of the conventions of the visual system. So that's the framework. Important to understand it. The other thing that I like about, let me remove these lines from here. Wonder if I can do that. No, now I can't do it. So the other thing about it, I like about this framework is that it includes the questions both for construction and for deconstruction. So we are mixing up the 2 weeks where we are deconstructing and constructing. So for deconstructing, we may talk about these questions right here, is when we are trying this exercise with our students, and we are going to try it during our synced ed talk. And when you are constructing something, also answer those questions and make sure that the message that you are conveying is actually what you want to say and what you want to send out. So, okay, moving on. Let's shift the focus from consuming multimodal text to the act of producing them. This act of creating to learn is all framed in the concept of participatory culture by Jenkins. These are the 5 characteristics of participatory culture. I introduced them in the reading in perusal, but if you haven't done the reading yet, or if you want a reminder, here they are. Now, I want you to think about them and give me an example of how you've been a part of this culture or how you've seen it displayed out there on social media. I'll give you my example in the following slide. So this is my example of participatory culture. It's a quote by a young girl and author. She talks precisely about how to empower children to consciously participate in the digital world. Now, what she says in this quote is a great representation of the characteristics of participatory culture. That appreciation of seeing that the world and the community values what you do. And so this is the idea behind the assignment option of creating a knowledge artifact, the assignment option that you have for this course. So if you selected that option, you will be creating something with your knowledge that will be valuable for the community of teachers. Now, whether you decide to put it out there or not, it's what you'll create. You'll create that knowledge artifact. So these were my examples of participatory culture, and I look forward to seeing yours in response to this voice thread. So these are the skills of participatory culture, and we are going to be doing an activity for this week. It's gonna replace the group activity because we have an evaluation coming up, a self-evaluation. We have this thing that talk next week, and I wanted to do the deconstruction exercise there. So that will leave us with very little time for another group activity, but I want you to do it individually, and it will be very informal. So I'm gonna want you to select an image or create an image. You may create a collage representing one of these skills. And I'm gonna give you more information about that in OWL. Now, before we start talking about creating multimodal texts in the classroom, I will leave you with another quote, this time by an author from the field of education. What do you think about this? Did you have experience creating these kinds of multimodal texts? I certainly did. I did some screenplays in high school, but only in language classes, which where we were actually studying screenplay scripting as a genre, and things like that. But I never related these ideas with another subject. So I'll read you. Is this possible? What do you think about this? So we talked about creating to learn and creating multimodal text to learn, but what kind of multimodal text can students create? When we talk about this multimodal text in the classroom, it can be print-based, such as books, comics, posters. A multimodal text can be digital, can be slide presentations, ebooks, blogs, e-posters, web pages, social media, animation, film, and video games. Those of you who may have taken the coding, the computational thinking course, may be able to create some games in the classroom with your students, which will be really interesting to do. Keep in mind that a multimodal text can also be live. It can be a performance. It can be a play. It can be an event. Even if creating a science fair, it's a great way to showcase students' knowledge, and that is considered a multimodal text, a live multimodal text. A multimodal text can be transmedia, meaning that you create and combine different channels, multiple channels. You can have all this combination in a website, for example, like kind of what you're doing with your portfolios. Most of you are using a website to host many other resources that you have there. Are creating videos, are creating podcasts. So that is really interesting to see, creating those transmedia multimodal texts. And then how do you it's okay, you ask students to create this text from your content, from the content of your subjects, but how do you assess it? How do you evaluate it? So there are many assessment criteria for multimodal text that you can find available on the internet, but here's one that I like. Of course, the weight of each category is something that you decide. Now, let's say that as a science teacher, you ask students to create a play about how different cells in the human body pass information to each other. And they are supposed to create a play about that. Well, it's very creative. Okay, in a case like that, of course, you are evaluating knowledge about the cells. So you'll be placing a greater weight in evaluating the substance. So the most substantial part will be the substance, which is the quality and the significance of content and ideas presented in the digital multimodal composition. But you'll also want to evaluate some of the other aspects here, which relate to important skills that we talked about before. Now, I will put the link to the full article in case you're interested. I will put it in VoiceThread. And I will also include a copy of an assessment guide that a group of my own students from last year created on this topic. I find it really helpful. And please, as you review it, keep in mind that last year, the Knowledge Artifact project was a group project. So don't be scared and don't think that you need to deliver something like that this year. You are expected to deliver about a quarter of that artifact. But anyways, I hope you find it really helpful too. I will leave it in one of the VoiceThread comments. So that's it for these 2 weeks. I hope to see you in our Sync Ed Talk, which now will be on Thursday, January 21st at 10:30 a.m. So thanks so much and see you around. Bye bye.